to buy the numbers. Mr. David Swalquist. Gators versus the Cocks. Buy the numbers here. $5 from Between the Hedges says, "Give him hell, Uncle Lou. Go Dogs." I love it. I love we got a lot of dogs in here. It's fun. I think it's a good little family event that we got going on here. But
we need a mixture of like Florida State, Georgia, like we need some LSU. It's healthy. It's healthy to have a bunch of shit talking in the chat. It's great.
It is. It keeps the blood pumping for sure. We didn't do this last week against Vandy. Didn't think we needed to, and thankfully we did not. But obviously, South Carolina should be a good matchup. Look, I said this against Kentucky. We favored well with the PFF numbers, but that defense was much better than I think it led on to believe. Although Georgia handled them nicely. But let's talk. Look, we'll let you do a little comparison of top 100 players in the PFF. So quarterback play, damn near tie with Spencer Rattler, and Spencer Rattler has been pretty exceptional given the fact of his O-line just being non-existent. For the QB1 for us, he was 55, I think, 2 weeks ago, so he dropped down a little bit, not too much of a difference there. Running backs, Trevor did drop out. You got to think him not playing against Vandy definitely hurt that. He was like 116, I believe. He was up very high before that, so we could have almost gave the nod there for one, but it is what it is. As for linemen, this is including D-line and offensive line. It's 5-1. So TJ Searcy, Princely, those guys, Cam Jackson's in that list as well. Jake Slaughter's still up there. So the offensive line and D-line is making huge steps. They only have one lineman. Wide receiver to tight end, we've got 2-1. Eugene Wilson's up there. Ricky is not up there. So, or was he? No, he was 99. Excuse me. He was number 2. I think what we saw, if we can get the same production out of our list, we'll start to see him climb up that ladder as well, possibly seeking in that top 100. And then DB, safeties, and linebackers were 2-1. I believe it was Kimber and Shamar James were the two names that were up there. But again, we've seen some, and Jordan Castell was not, which I was surprised. I want to say that he was just a few weeks ago. I think he might have slipped out. So pretty close to 3-3 if we want to get a little dicey with it. So looking at just this, again, quick little by the numbers, by the talent-wise, Florida has the edge here. And this is where, again, going into South Carolina, outside of it being a travel game, right? Because I feel like that's our weakness, that's our kryptonite at this moment, is going on the road to South Carolina is where things are going to, be an issue. And Spencer Rattler's going to do a lot of great things, but again, that O-line isn't anything exciting about. And you have some numbers that we're going to break down even more in regards to rush defense. So I'll pass it over to you, big guy.
Yeah, I crunch numbers a little bit here, and I like teamrankings.com because they factor in FBS opponents and they leave the FCS opponents out, so it doesn't really, you know how you can you pad the stats with FCS opponents, so it keeps those guys out, and it gives you your actual numbers against the actual FBS opponents this year. And in points per game, South Carolina is 93rd right now. In total yards per game, they're 83rd. Offensive rushing yards per game, they're 120th. I mean, they're not rushing the football at all. When you look at their actual rushers, Rattler's actually second on the team with 203 yards, and he averages 8.5 yards per rush, but it's only 8 attempts. So it's your yards per rush is probably going to be a little bit, exaggerated there with 8 attempts. And he has 10 runs at 10-plus yards or more, which leads the team in 10-yard rushing yards as well. So the quarterback is rushing the football better than all the running backs on the team. The only other person who leads the team in rushing is Mario Anderson. He's rushed for 230 yards. He averages 5.2 yards per attempt with 44 attempts, and he's only had 2 runs at 10-plus yards or more. So it's like, when you look at it, they're not a good rushing team. Their O-line's been pretty bad. When you look at their defensive numbers, they're 95th in scoring defense, allowing 31.5 points per game against FBS opponents. Total yards given up per game, they're 125th, giving up almost 500 yards a game, 472.8. Rushing yards given up per game, 156.8. That should bode a little bit well in our favor. They're ranked 78th. Passing defense is where I look at this, and I'm like, wow, because I did not know that they were this bad passing on defense. 129th in the nation. They're allowing 316 yards passing. Penalties per game, they're 81st, allowing 6.5, but Florida's like 113th in that category, allowing like 7.4. So, yeah, you got to clean up the penalties there. But when you look at it overall, I mean, Spencer Rattler, 72.1% completion rating. He's thrown 7 touchdowns and 3 interceptions, but he's been sacked 21 times. Florida's got to get a sack in this game. They got to get 2, 3, 4. I mean, you have to get some pressure on this struggling offensive line. They're only averaging 81 rush yards per game. as a team. So they can't even run the ball. And for Spencer Rattler to have 1,400 yards passing, 72% completion rating, it's pretty good for not having an offensive line. We remember 2020 with Kyle Trask. We couldn't really run the football. Trask had to pass the whole season, and he broke like season passing records and
Sure.
everything else. Unfortunately, our defense was not the greatest, and we still lost 4 games. But you know, for Spencer Rattler to have those sort of statistics, that's pretty good. And what really worries me, and I guess when it comes up to matchup wise, is Florida's kind of struggle a little bit on those deep shots. They give up one in Utah, they gave up a couple against Vanderbilt. We know, Jason Marshall's helmet got tugged on. It didn't get called, but it was there, and Vanderbilt scores. But lately, if you looked at it, and I don't have the statistic pulled up here, but every time a team has tossed at least past 20 yards, they've been able to hit it at least if it was like 30, 40 yard or a big bomb. So that's the only thing I guess that really worries me about it. But if you're getting pressure on Spencer Rattler all just the whole game, he's not going to have time to drop back and throw deep. But the person that does scare me, if he was able to do that, Xavier Legette, everybody knows him. He's one of the best receivers in the SEC right now, 606 yards.
Hughes, yeah.
232 yards after the catch. He's caught 84.2% of his receptions, which is actually really good because those factor in when you throw the ball, if you overthrow a football. That's not really on the receiver. That's on the quarterback. He has an 83.4 PFF grade, and he's accounted for 19 first downs, which is 25% of the team's first downs on the team. So that's a guy to look for in the backfield. And you also got the tight end, Trey Knox, who's second on the team with 164 yards. He's 9.6 yards per reception. I mean, it's not really anything that jumps off the screen to you. I mean, when you go down and look at some of the receivers, there's not really any impressive numbers. And I hate to say that because it's like, I don't want to say that South Carolina is just going to be one of those pushover teams because of how we struggled on the road this year.
Sure.
But if you look at it on paper and you compare Florida statistics to South Carolina statistics, you watch a little bit of film, Florida should easily be able to win this football game, even easier than Kentucky. And I think that's the issue right now is like, I don't want to sit here and be like, okay, well, we easily got this game won because I thought that against Kentucky because they haven't played anybody, but at the same time, we didn't know what kind of team Kentucky was. We came out flat, no energy, and just let them run 280 yards. They can't pass the ball. The only thing we had to do in that game was stop the run, and we probably would have won that game. That's what Georgia did. I mean, they stopped the run. They knew O'Leary couldn't pass. They put up 51 points on him. So I think Florida, if they stick to their game plan, I think if they get some pressure on the quarterback, I think they'll be all right. I mean, I think Florida's going to be able to run the football. They're giving up a lot of rushing yards, passing yards as well. Should be an easy game for Florida to win, but as I said, the road game curse, we really don't know what to expect. But I think Florida's going to be a little bit more prepared this time, just based considering on that Kentucky game that we just talked about with Ricky Pearsall.
Absolutely. And we got Josh Prey waiting here for us now, so we're going to get over to him to talk